There's certainly married couples in this business and married morning shows and married program directors, Don Martin, Robin Bertolucci. But I think you and Chris, at least in my recollection, you took start number 125.54. He's taken K-Earth number 1. Both take individual stations to the very top in Los Angeles. I don't think I'm aware of it ever happening before.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's really cool.
That is cool. Wow, pretty cool.
Benztown president Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
For nearly 2 decades, today's guest has focused her career, time, and energy on one thing: developing personalities and personality brands. Along the way, she's noticed a real gap, the space between what talent actually needs in terms of feedback and the time and bandwidth managers realistically have to provide it. So she built a unique approach to bridge that gap, combining major market radio experience with life coaching expertise to meet performers exactly where they are and inspire them to reach their full potential. Before launching her own company, she spent more than 20 years programming some of the most influential female-targeted radio stations in the country, including K101 in San Francisco and KYSR FM here in Los Angeles, where we actually met each other for the first time, earning multiple industry awards along the way. She worked with truly legendary talent: Kevin and Bean, Carson Daly, Shaboy, Chet Buchanan, and many more. I'm thrilled to welcome someone who has quietly shaped voices you hear every day. Please welcome Angela Perelli.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Angela, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. You and I first met here in Los Angeles. I think it was close to, let me think about this, 2026. It was 22, 23, 24 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, was it 2002, 2003?
Yeah. Your career is a storied career, and you were someone that I'd watched early on in my career before I moved up here to LA, and then actually to be able to work in the hallways with you was such an honor. I learned a lot and followed what you did for a long time.
Aw, thanks, Chachi. Come on.
Tell me a little bit about growing up.
Growing up, okay, starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely grew up listening to the radio. I grew up in San Francisco, in the city itself, which is a unique, lovely experience, especially in that time in the 60s. And my dad was a hippie.
Was he?
Yeah. So we went to Haight Street to buy beads, and we went to peace marches. And so I definitely a California girl through and through. Grew up listening to KFRC, Dr. Don, going to bed, would listen to it. I grew up actually with Keith Naftali, who's another radio or music veteran professional. And we went to school together, and we would listen to the countdowns at 9:45 in the morning. We would have a transistor radio in our desk and listen to the top 5. So we both were into music and radio from an early age.
I love that. And what a great town to grow up in and listening to the radio. So your family, sounds like they're artistic.
Both teachers, actually.
Okay.
Which is, sometimes I get my teacher hat on when I'm coaching. I'm like, I'm sorry, I got a daughter of 2 teachers, one math, one English, so I can't help myself,
So did they encourage you to kind of express yourself and go out there on a limb?
Well, when you've got I had one sibling who was a little bit more older than I was and more into the scene at the time, getting himself into some trouble here and there. I think my directive from them was to just toe the line and be a good girl and get good grades. And it wasn't like, be free, be expressive. It was more like, don't mess up like he did. And, so it was an interesting path. And they were both musicians too, piano and guitar and flute and drums and stuff. So I definitely grew up with music in the house. And
when you were listening to radio with your friend Keith, who went on to be a great programmer, were you thinking at this point, I want to be on the air, or I want to be involved in working in the business?
Do you know what? I never did. In fact, I majored in communications at UCLA, and I still didn't know that I wanted to be in the radio. And in fact, I moved back to San Francisco after graduation, and I didn't have a job, but I had a boyfriend who was temping at a bank with a guy who did weekends at a radio station, and they were talking about me, and he goes, oh, she should apply to be an intern. Don Blue, who was another legendary morning show in San Francisco, was looking for a morning show intern. And so totally randomly, I was at home, didn't know what I was doing with my life, walked in, and there were 3 of us that applied. None of us had any radio experience. He took our resumes to the receptionist, who was flamboyant, gay guy, and said, who should I hire? And, Teresa, Angela, or Mandy or whatever. And he goes, oh, hire Angela. You could call her Angel in the Morning, which was a big song at the time. And that was how I got into radio. I don't know if that song wasn't out or if Ed wasn't the receptionist at the station at the time. I may have I don't know what I would be doing.
You
now.
just happen to have the right name, and one of the most legendary morning show hosts in the country selects you to be his intern.
Right. And it was a 3-month internship that I ended up staying at for over a year and a half because I was having so much fun. And that was when I really started to realize that morning radio was such a gift to the community, to wake up a city and to wake people up, make them laugh. Listeners would call and you could hear babies crying in the background, dogs barking. Their life is so chaotic. And they're like, I couldn't get through my morning without you. And I really took that to heart and realized how important it was for people, for listeners.
What was it like to work with Don?
Oh, he's the best. I mean, he's such a pro, so funny and creative, just as a dream. It's like, several of us, friends of mine that have worked with him, are like, it's hard to go past him because he sets the bar so high because he's just a great guy, just funny and kind and so talented too.
And so to go, you're obviously very bright. You went to UCLA. That's a very prestigious school. You had, I'm sure you said great grades, but that still was, I'm sure, a big learning curve to walk in as an intern.
Right.
Never in radio before, and to work for a morning man like Don at that stature in a major market.
Right.
And at that point, I think Don was mostly ruling that city, right?
I think he was, at my age that I didn't really follow the ratings as much. I was new to the whole thing, but I know that he was, and it was an NBC owned radio station when they owned radio back then. And it was a full staff too. Back then you had it was union. So you had a board op, there was a news person, a traffic person, a sports guy who also was a creative writer. And then he had comedy people that would come in and perform. So it was a big, full show.
Full
it
on
was
production.
Just fun to be a part of that. Just answer the phones and fill out the prize sheets,
You fall in love with it at that point?
Yeah, I just realized that I think part of me wanted to maybe work for NPR or something. Like you said, I was a good student, smart, but I realized that making people laugh and entertaining people was just as valuable and sometimes more valuable.
It's really well put.
So yeah, I got kind of hooked.
So at that point, you decide, hey, you're ready? This is what you're deciding. You're wanting to pursue a career in radio?
Well, I was not sure what the next step was, right? Because I hadn't been on the air. It was a major market. So it wasn't like I could go everybody gave me the advice to move to Bakersfield and go do overnights or something. And I was such a snob, growing up in San Francisco. Please don't make me move to Bakersfield. Nothing against Bakersfield. And so I actually left for a while. Okay, this sounds really bizarre, but I decided to pursue massage therapy.
No, I think this is so cool. You've had some interesting journeys throughout your
plot
career.
Twists.
Yeah, no, okay. So you decide you're going to you don't want to move to Bakersfield.
Right.
So you go down a different path.
I go to massage school and I'm doing part-time work as I can get it with temp agencies and different offices, advertising offices and businesses downtown. And again, and it's almost like my destiny was calling me to come back to radio because a salesperson for K101 called this place where I was the receptionist and was trying to get a hold of someone to make a sale. And I helped her get in touch with who she was looking for. And so she said, if you ever want to come by the radio station, I'll give you a tour. And I was like, oh, I actually used to work at a radio station. And it was 3 blocks from where this temp office was. And so I went in the next day, I think, because I was so excited about it. And they were looking for a morning show producer. And so again, I was like sucked back in. And
serendipitously a second time back into radio.
Exactly. And it was Dr. Don Rose who was coming back to the radio for K101 at the time. And so that was another unique experience to work with another major talent.
Sure. Did you feel like you were equipped at that point to be his producer?
I felt better, for sure. I had a better sense because I had been doing it for a while. I knew how to, at that time there was no internet. It's just sometimes when I hear myself talk, I feel like, how old am I? Like there was no internet.
Right.
Like we would get the newspaper on the front step at 5 a.m. and cut out the articles and tape them to papers and write our ideas.
I remember prep sheets being faxed.
Right. Back in my day. This sounds so crazy. So that was really the launch, because after that, then I was a morning show producer, and then I started getting into programming because they were looking for we finally got Selector in the building, and they were looking for someone to help load all the songs in. And I was just at that age and hunger to just do whatever they needed done, right? And I had gotten that advice from the PD at Don Blues Station of just make yourself indispensable.
I think is great advice, still to this day, to, hustle, do everything you're asked to do and then some.
More, exactly.
I had a similar, ethic in terms of, I was probably overly zealous and interested in just about everything. So I would jump into the engineering room or, want to learn how to schedule music or go on a sales call. I found it all so fascinating.
It is such an interesting business and it changes all the time. It's so fun. And the music element of it, I was really intrigued by too.
But is really your first, I know it's not your first gig, but it's, close within the first couple of years of starting your career to be producing a San Francisco morning show. That's a pressure cooker position.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was. And he had a very unique style of radio that he brought a lot to himself. So it wasn't somebody walking in going, what's on the show today? Which is what some...
No, he was prepared.
Yeah, he did his own thing.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it was helpful for sure.
And so you start to take on music scheduling, you learn Selector, and now here's a whole other part of the business. And you obviously are known for being an incredible talent coach and consultant, but you're also a brilliant programmer. I think it's probably the part of your career. And so now do you become more interested in that part of the business?
For sure. Being the music director and then being the program director's, I don't think I was APD at that time, but it was the assistant to the program director, I guess. So I was typing all of his memos and in a lot of the meetings and was really curious about what was going on in those closed door meetings in the GM's office when the marketing director and the sales manager and the PD are all in there. And so I got to start being in there, taking notes and again, just absorbing everything like a sponge and learning from everybody and really being intrigued by how the sausage is made, right? Yeah. How the decisions are made.
Our paths are so similar. I started, as a producer as well, and then got interested in the programming side. Both aspects are so fascinating to me.
For sure. And even just the scheduling the music, I think, is so cool. Before Spotify and all that, people got their music from the radio, and you're creating these, whether it's Christmas music or totally 80s weekends, you're creating this entertainment for a whole city. It's really fun.
In a lot of ways, tastemakers and
right?
setting the vibe of the weekend. Absolutely, absolutely. So you get now a gig back at K101, morning show producer, programming assistant, music director, APD. You've got to be, what at this point, maybe in your early 20s?
Yeah. I started at K101 probably 22 or 23 and stayed there for 7 years, moving my way up and then going through, it was at the time where there was so many mergers and we had 7 different program directors and 3 different GMs and 4 different companies. And, so just learning how to be nimble and just go with the flow and not be attached to anything, any one way of doing things, because every new PD would come in and change the station voice and change the slogan and change the format of the music. Like they all have to put their stamp on it. And
it's one of the most high profile stations in the country. What do you think you did in terms of just the way that you handled yourself to make it through that period without becoming shrapnel?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think at the time I was so hungry and really open to learning what everybody had. And also, there was a part of me that was judging every new PD that would come in, of course. I don't want to sound like I'm too perfect. This idiot comes in and wants to change this or that. And learning really from what, and in fact, my mom, your mom is always your biggest fan. She's like, when are you going to be the program director? All these knuckleheads are coming in or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And, we both agreed that you learn from everybody. You learn what to do and you also learn what not to do, how not to handle certain situations or how not to handle, particularly in management conversations of how. So I was just a sponge even then and just working hard and head down. I just loved it. It was my whole life. I was single and living downtown and walking to work. It was a fun time and lots of concerts and station events. And with Dawn Blue in the morning, that was a full show. And we had Shirley, the stunt girl, who's still a close friend of mine, who would, she's out on the corner milking cows into people's coffee and setting things on fire. And, we were just doing it was a fun time for radio. Just all of those ridiculous stunts on the street, downtown.
For sure.
So
and,
fun.
The music was a great era for that music and that format. And the city was just, what an exciting time.
Yeah,
and
it was fun.
You couldn't have probably asked for just a better combination of where you were living and what was happening musically speaking and the fact that you were so driven and, into what you were doing. Who were some of the PDs that came through at that juncture?
I'll just rattle them off.
Please.
And so Bobby Cole was there when I started. He's the one that gave me the job as the music director and his assistant. So I learned a lot from him. Bill Stairs came in after him. Bob Lawrence was from Kansas City, I think. He came in after that, Bob. And then Dave Shakes came over from KMEL. He became over both stations, so he came in. That was the last one that I worked with before I moved to LA. So, and I must be forgetting. Oh, John Evans, who was the news director, stepped into the PD job for a while, and I think there must have been one. Oh, Larry Berger was another programmer who came in from New York and took over for a while.
You really did go through.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think there were 7 of them. It was a revolving door for a while.
Yeah, but what a great experience to learn to work with those different personalities and to be able to certainly glom on and pick up probably some of the good things and some of the bad things,
Yeah. It was like an accordion. Like one PD would come in and be really anal, for lack of a better word, really controlling about everything. And then the next PD would come in and be much more collaborative and open things up. And then it would get too loose and the next PD would come in and tighten things up again. And so it was just an interesting thing to watch. Like, what is the right place to be? And you can't be too controlling, but you can't be too collaborative because they need leadership. The staff needs leadership. And so just watching that accordion, the natural accordion of trying to control the chaos of a radio station, which is...
Let's expand on that for a second. Did that experience certainly help shape who you became as a program director?
I don't think so, because I think naturally as a program director, you become the program director that's based on the person that you are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Although I did realize that I couldn't be as loose as some of the looser program directors. You have to set, especially when you've got a lot of talent, a lot of high profile people, you have to set good boundaries for everybody. Otherwise you're just running amok. So I felt like I was kind of a mother hen, like, no, come back to the, come back to the barn. So I don't know. I think I really became the program director just based on my natural personality. And I think we all do, whether you're more right-brained or more left-brained or more collaborative or more independent in your thinking.
It's a really fascinating observation. It makes total sense, though.
Right?
Yeah. As you say that, and I'm reflecting on myself. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I did pick up bits and pieces, but you do end up accentuating probably who you really are.
Yeah, at least I bet eventually.
Yeah.
As you get more comfortable in the role, you have to make it your own. Otherwise, people smell that you're just putting on an act or you're putting on a role, kind of like on-air people.
Yeah. It's well put.
Got to be yourself.
You are also probably one of the only people that had stayed throughout this entire period because there were so many program directors. So you were, I'm guessing, some stability for the rest of the team. You were a common thread from,
that's a good point.
And you may not have realized this at the time, but I'm guessing that was quite a bit of responsibility because you knew how the operation ran.
Yeah.
So I could imagine as new PDs came in, they looked at you as a resource to, help. You knew how the institutional knowledge of the format.
Yeah, that's probably very true. That did help with the stability.
So are you at this point actively looking to be a program director? Have you made the decision that this is what I want to do? I don't want to move to Bakersfield, but I want to program a radio station.
I think, because I had been acting PD and then APD and then acting PD and then APD and then acting PD through all of these changes.
I didn't realize that. So they kind of teased you with it. Were you interviewing at that point for PD?
Well, I did interview once and I burst into tears the minute that he asked, why do you think you are ready for this job? So I don't think I was ready, to be honest. I'm like, well, I've just seen all these other guys do it. I think I could probably do it. And he was right, that there was more going on, more to it than I could see, even from as close as I was.
That's truly endearing. It shows your passion.
Yeah, I was like, oh, my mom, probably gave me the pep talk and I went in and completely collapsed. But
so they really, though, saw a lot in you, making you acting PD that young and
a woman too, which was very unusual at that time.
Yeah. Let's unpack that for a minute. Did you feel at that juncture, I've, interviewed Deborah Parente and Leslie Visser, and did you at this point in the 90s, was it still chauvinistic, shall we say?
Oh, yes. I'm trying to think of some specific examples, but I probably blocked them out. Okay. But I think there was, at least at K101, there was a woman marketing director, a woman sales manager, and local sales manager. So it wasn't, I remember actually, this is chauvinistic. We walked into a department head meeting and maybe the corporate was in town, but there was maybe 5 women in the meeting and 4 men. And the general manager at the time, who I won't name, was like, wow, Bob, look, we're outnumbered. Like, he was so threatened by there being, and it was not outnumbered by much. It was really almost 50-50, but it threw him off that there were so many women in the meeting. And I remember him walking by another time, and the marketing director, the sales manager, and I think I was the music director at the time, were working through a promotion. He's like, oh, what's going on in here? Girl talk? So just dealing with those little moments of you just want to punch somebody in the face.
I
what
get
are you
it.
talking about?
Yeah.
We're here. We're working on we're trying to make you successful. We're working on your radio station, trying to do good things. And so there was definitely, it was just a lot of meetings where you're the only woman in the room. A lot of those corporate programming meetings where you're like, wow, there is not one other woman in here. It's just
intimidating.
It's intimidating. And you try to, I remember reading the sports page so that I knew if the Lakers, this was in LA, but just a little bit later in my career, but still trying to make sure that I could fit in the conversation that happened the 5 minutes before the department head meeting started or whatever, that I was up on what everybody was going to be talking about. And so it's just extra work.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for the females that have made it in this industry because it's tough enough to begin with, but you guys had to deal with a whole other layer of complexities and unfortunate bad behavior that I think was certainly pronounced in probably some groups more than others, but I've heard sadly a lot of those stories.
Yeah.
Leslie Visser told me when she first started doing NFL games, there was like no bathroom for her to use in the stadium. Like she would have to run to the parking lot to go to the restroom.
Wow.
And she didn't have the same access that the men would have to the players. And she'd have to wait outside to interview them when everyone else could be in the warm locker room.
Oh, yeah. She's got some stories.
She really does. She really does. You get the opportunity to come to Los Angeles, which is mind-boggling. Market 4, Market 5 to now Market 2. How did that opportunity get presented to you?
Yeah, well, we worked with Dan Valley and Randy Lane as our consultants at K101, and Randy had just started, he was still with Dan, but he was starting to do talent coaching. And so he had come in fact, we didn't know, but Don Blue and our show was his first attempt at, doing the talent coaching on its own. He kind of came up with his own formula for how to work with a show. And I really liked Randy, and we talked about music and stuff. And Randy became the program director of Star in LA and was looking for an APD. I had been spending a lot of time coming down to LA. We were doing a lot of events. We'd fly down for a concert or for the VH1 Awards, all those things that were going on in the 90s.
All the radio blasts, which were a lot of fun.
Exactly, the R&R convention and stuff. And we would come down. And so, and at the same time, I sort of hinted that my brother was kind of troubled. And at the same time, he has been arrested and is in jail, and I'm driving past his jail every day on my way to work, and it was just a very heavy time personally, and I thought, I need to get out of San Francisco. I can't, it's just too much. And every time I went to LA, it was palm trees and sunshine, and we'd rent a convertible, my friends and I drive around, and it just felt like a lighter, and radio at the time in LA, you'd come to LA and the radio stations would just pop out of the speakers. They were just, the commercials were amazing, and the jingles and the imaging was amazing. Everything was just so much, felt bigger than life and so exciting. And so when I had a good relationship with Randy and I wanted to move to LA, and so when that opportunity came up, I remember calling the next day and they're like, he hasn't even started yet. He doesn't start for 3 weeks. I'm like, oh, okay. Hold on. Settle down.
So you couldn't wait. And you'd spent time at UCLA, so you'd already been down here.
Right. I'd lived here for 5 years before, and so I knew a little bit about, I was on the west side as opposed to the valley, but still I knew LA and liked it.
At this juncture in LA, every 10th of a rating point equated to $1 million in revenue. So the pressure, and it was the number one bill. It was market number 2, as it still is, but the number 1 billing market in the country. We would outbill New York. I'm not sure if it's still like that or not, but it was $1 billion a year market was essentially what it was worth. And the landscape at that point was Kevin and Bean were at K-Rock, Mark and Brian were at KLOS, Mark and Kim were at Coast. You had Dee's at KISS.
Right. Big Boy
at Power. Just these massive morning shows that were dominating the landscape. And you come to KYSR, and the format's still relatively new. The Hot AC format as a whole is still in its early days.
There was Coast and K-Big at the time, which was my FM already. So Star was the third female-targeted adult hit radio station in the market. And so we saw an opportunity through I'm not going to suggest that I came up with the modern AC format, but you
were certainly one of the architects.
Part of it, yeah. It was true. Every week trying to figure out what the format was, it was much more challenging for this because it changed every week and trying to stay on course. But it was a great opportunity to go, rather than being the third AC station, to be more foreground station flanked by KISS on one side and K-Rock on the other side. So we really took ourselves out of the Coast and K-Big competition and threw ourselves into the how do we sandwich ourselves between these two huge powerhouses and play the best of both of those and then still build our own artists and our own brand in the middle of that.
So you get here, what does the lineup look like?
There was, in fact, I got here and there was new ownership and he was let go within a few months. So I had just come from this revolving door and it was some changes that were happening. And he became, he's like, should I buy this house? And they're like, yeah. And then he got, and the GM was also out. So I moved to LA and within 3 months, the PD that hired me and the GM that hired me were both gone.
I did not. That's insane.
Yeah.
So you get here, almost a repeat of what was going on in San Francisco. I did not know that.
Yeah, there was a lot. And then Dave Beasing, who is a great friend of mine, and he had been over the soft AC that was in our same building in a sister station, came and was over Star for the next year.
I see. Okay, so Randy left. You're a PDMD.
Right.
They let Randy go. Dave steps in.
Right.
And both incredible mentors.
Yeah, definitely. Learned from both of them and still in touch with both of them. But what the lineup ended up, we had Mark Goodman from MTV for a while. And then Larry Morgan, who is now still on K-Earth, was doing mornings. And then we brought in Jamie, Frosty, and Frank. That was the big move to just step into we're going to be a competitive top tier morning show station and have a high profile. And then we had Greg Sims did middays for a while.
Right.
He's still in town.
Yep.
And Lara Scott, who's on K-Earth now as well. So Greg, Larry, and Lara are all now on K-Earth. They were all original Star.
It's one of those stations, and I kind of, my parallel Star in San Diego, because that's where I came up with, but where most of the staff is still working in this business and, successfully, which blows my mind.
I know, right?
So it's impressive to hear that lineup.
It was a good lineup. And then Rick Stacy was doing afternoons, and he's still in the business. He's doing mornings and programming in Orlando, I think now. And he killed it in afternoons. And then they left, he and Leah Brandon, who was his partner, left to go to Denver to do mornings. That's when we moved Ryan Seacrest, who had been doing weekend evenings because he was 20 years old. And then we moved him to nights and then eventually moved him to afternoons with Lisa Fox, who is also still on the air in LA, and as is Ryan. So it was a great lineup of talent.
The decision to bring in Jamie, Frosty, and Frank, at that point, is that Dave, you, and did you have consultants involved at that point?
We had Guy Zapolian and Steve Davis, his partner in crime, who were amazing and helped us navigate the waters of the music. And Ken Christensen, who was the GM, who was probably the person of all of the people we've talked about who I learned the most from. And somebody said, working under Ken is like going to business school. And I still hear myself to this day repeating things that
I only got to meet him briefly, but I'd heard a lot of great things.
Yeah, he was the one that when Dave left that had the belief in me to make me the program director. He interviewed so many other people. He's like, you know what? I think we've got the person in the building and I'll help you and we'll hire. I had never been a program director before, really. And here I am at Star in Los Angeles. And, he's like, we'll get Guy Zapolian. We'll bring Randy Lane in if you need help with talent coaching, but you've got the goods. Let's just go. So that was really...
And you did, to his credit, the experience you had at this point, the shows you'd worked with, the station, obviously San Francisco and people, but that's still a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
Let's start first with Jamie, Frosty, and Frank. Mm-hmm. That's a big morning show, big personalities. You are now in this role. How did you manage that? In so many ways, I believe being a program director is being a therapist in a lot of ways.
Right.
And you're still, though, relatively young. You definitely have experience, but to have personalities of that magnitude is difficult for even the most experienced person to manage. Yeah. I think Phil Jackson would even struggle, Yeah,
no kidding. They were... And Jamie, was the leader of that and really basically a shock jock like Howard Stern on the female side of what she would say and how she would talk about her own life, her sex life, her affairs, and talk about everybody on the radio station, early in the morning before they got up. And so we're always like unruffling feathers of what people heard her say. And to me too, like I would get up and before she thought I was listening and hear her talking about our meeting the day before or whatever. I'm like, oh my God.
It was riveting, incredibly entertaining radio, but at the same time, not much of a filter, if any at all.
Yeah.
So what happened in real life most of it came through the speakers.
Yeah, exactly. And and that was brilliant for her. And well, this was later, but when Danny came in, he would say he would go to meetings at Paramount or whatever and meet with the head of program development or whatever, a very successful woman, and she would hate Jamie because Jamie was so, I don't know what they would say, trashy or whatever. But then all the assistants would gather around me and ask me all about Jamie. Like she had a way of connecting with just your regular women dealing with life, and she still does. I mean,
I would argue she was probably ahead of her time in terms of like reality television and reality, what we've grown so accustomed to with social media. But what she did was remarkable, but there's no doubt that she was polarizing.
Yeah. and tough to manage, and admittedly, like I saw her a few years ago at boot camp, and she's like, I'm sorry. She's like, I was 28. I just had come, I was a girl from Southern Illinois, this little, not a farm girl, but just a small town girl thrown into this major market, under 30, just coming here, top of the world. Their ratings skyrocketed almost immediately. We did an event 6 weeks after they got to town at the Hard Rock down in, Irvine or Newport Beach or wherever it was. There was a line all the way around, like, who are all these people? Like in 6 weeks, they had already developed this fan base that was just incredible. So, but managing them, well, we had a list of all the words you can't say on the radio. And it kept growing because every day she would challenge in a different way. Like, I don't even want to go there of what some of these words were, but like it was a constant wrangling, like I said earlier about the mother hen, trying to just keep everybody in the fence,
Sure.
Like, please don't lose. And there became some challenges with artists, and that's why Ryan and Lisa ended up doing a lot of the star lounges and stuff, because she did not want to play the game. And I don't blame her, because it wasn't her brand to, well, don't ask him about this, or don't say that, or talk up the new song. And she's like, well, what if I don't like the new song? It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, we're not, and labels would start saying, we're not bringing our artist to your morning show. So, but they had a whole other different kind of a show. So we had these two completely different.
Yeah. And you, as obviously the program director, you had a lot of pressure on you to put big shows together, and you need to make sure that the artists are being taken care of.
Please don't ask Lenny Kravitz how big his penis is, for example. Like, why do you have to do that? You're killing me. Right?
I remember that billboard campaign. This was certainly a different era, but I can only imagine what it must have cost, where you couldn't get around town without seeing a Jamie billboard with, I think, with the cigar she had.
Oh,
and it was like this, massive campaign, and it was a really big deal.
Yeah,
and the station was just firing on all cylinders.
It was an exciting time.
Yeah, and let's get into Ryan, who in so many ways is the opposite of Jamie. Obviously, a megastar, and it's remarkable to what he has become, but so polished, and you could put him on live TV all day long and never have to worry about him saying something.
Right,
but,
incredible.
Yeah,
just the opposite.
Yeah. So you guys identify him. He's in Atlanta at the time.
He moved to LA to do some TV.
Okay.
And Tony Novia, who was the program director in Atlanta, had told him, and it was when Randy was still at Star, like, you got to go to Star, talk to my buddy Randy, they'll get you in. So we got him in to start doing weekends. Literally, he did 7 to midnight, Saturdays and Sundays. He was 20 years old, Levi's and a cable knit sweater and curly hair, long curly hair, and just this young, boyish guy with a dream, And even then, he talks about how when he was, 8, he wanted to be Dick Clark. This is a guy that knew from the very beginning, the opposite of me, who kept getting pulled back into radio without my control, but was the complete opposite, that just knew he wanted to be a host from the very beginning, and practiced with a soap on a microphone soap, in his living room when he was a little kid, and just. It was really impressive. The work ethic that he had, the bar that he set for everybody else, because he was such a perfectionist for his own show. And if the promo wasn't ready on time, or the liner had the wrong date for the movie screening or whatever, we heard about it, because he expected the same from everybody else. And that was great. It raised the bar for everybody. And you know what? He was a guy, so he was doing afternoons. He hired his own assistant, because we weren't gonna, we don't hire assistants for afternoon shows. So he had his own personal assistant. He made his own swag to send out to celebrities that came on his show he made his own logo and did his own, like he was his own brand from the get-go.
I did not know that. I love that story. I don't know if you remember Dan Granger, who sold he was an AE for KFI and did very well selling airtime back when we were there at Clear Channel together. And same deal, he didn't have his own assistant, so he hired his own assistant and continued to crush it and was like the number one seller. And then he went and started his own agency, Oxford Road, they just bought Veritone. And I mean, they place a third of, I'm guessing, but maybe a third of the podcast ads that are out there.
Wow.
I think the biggest podcast agency, and similar success story.
Yeah, he did it for himself.
Yes,
and I still tell people that story. Like sometimes you're not going to get the stuff to give away. We don't have anything to give away. It's like, well, go on Etsy and order keychains with your, come up with your own logo and give them out and make them seem they're custom, that no money can't buy them. You can only get them from us, and make it something exciting and big. And, sometimes you have to do it yourself. You can't.
You're right. It goes to show you that hustle does pay off.
Right.
But it really you've got to go above and beyond.
Yeah. And for Ryan, I mean, he just had the talent. I remember we were doing a remote at one point, and he was on stage talking to the engineer, and he just waved his finger at me to come over. And there's 200-300 listeners. It was some Halloween remote or something. And I walked up and I'm like, how's it going? He goes, we're off the air. But you never would have known it. He wasn't throwing headphones. He wasn't screaming and yelling. He was calm as a cucumber. He's trying to figure it all out. And the guy was just so polished under pressure, just knew from the beginning, just knew how to do the job. It was really impressive.
Where did you guys come up with the idea to pair him with Lisa Fox?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure Lisa would remember. I wish I could remember how.
I was always impressed with that bookend that you guys had. You had such a strong morning show, and then to go in, obviously with Lisa and Ryan in the afternoons.
I do remember.
In a lot of ways, it was 2 morning shows, one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
It really was. It was a lot. I just had a flashback of my days. But Lisa was working in San Francisco at the time. I think she was at Camille or Wild or one of those. And she would come to LA and loved the station and dropped off a package with a handwritten note just saying, Angela, this is also advice that I give, huge fan of the station, would love to work here someday. Here's my tape, let me know if you've got anything. And it was a real note. It was authentic. She knew who I was. It wasn't Dear Mr. Perelli, which I used to get air checks from people, that I'd immediately throw in the garbage. Like if you can't even do your homework to know that I'm not a guy, then I don't, want to have you here. But she was a fan of the station, and as soon as I heard her tape, I thought her voice just fit the station's right in the demo, and loved the music and all that. And they just hit it off together, and were a great team together for many, many years together. And that was fun to watch them grow. I remember the one ratings, and we were used to being at the bottom of the first page or the top of the second page, and I look and I'm like, where are they? And they were at the top of the first page, number 1 in afternoons, 12 plus, I think at that time, which was unheard of for our station. And we just had so much champagne that night. It was such a fun celebration.
I'm glad you did, because I talked to a lot of people that never really celebrated those moments, but to put together such an amazing staff and the music and your marketing, and I think Robert Lyles was your marketing director.
Robert Lyles was amazing.
All firing in all cylinders, and that happens so rare, and you really had that moment, which was just in that era too. I don't think it could have been a more exciting time.
Yeah. We decided too that we would do, and I got this from, I don't know which program director and started it in San Francisco, but we would have a programming dinner every quarter, whether the ratings were up or down. And if they were up, we would celebrate. And if they were down, we would, cry in our drinks. And that was something that I brought to LA. Because if you're going to beat yourself up when the ratings are down, you may as well celebrate when they're up. Because neither one matter ultimately. I mean, they just come and go, but you may as well, because you're killing yourself if they're down. So you may as well celebrate for that 1 minute that, before the next one comes out.
I remember the anxiety when they would have to, you download them at 10 a.m. and just kind of waiting for that file. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was painful.
I do not miss that.
No, me neither.
You rise to the VP of operations. Mm-hmm. What did that feel like when they?
That was like, now I have to meet with engineers. I don't know anything about engineering. Like, just make it sound good.
I mean, you already have 3 full-time jobs, just keeping mornings and afternoons and the whole station on track.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just I think it really ultimately was a bigger title for the same position, just another sort of reward for all the hard work and a little bit more money and all of that comes with it, and more of a revenue, trying to get me less focused on the brand, cleanly on the brand, which is what we did for so long at Star, was just focusing on the brand. And then the brand ended up making money, but we didn't do a lot of sales promotions and things like that. And so this was a new company coming in and saying, we're going to be doing more sales things now.
We're going to integrate.
We're going to give you a bigger title and give you some revenue bonuses so that you care a lither bit more about.
Who owns the company now?
Now we're at Clear Channel with Roy.
Okay.
The stations are all in the
Understood.
same building.
Yeah. That's about when I got here in 2000, and that's K-Big, Coast, KLAC, KFI, KYSR, KISS. All came together in less than a year, I think. It was a pretty quick through all those acquisitions.
And it was tough because we were really scrappy little fighters against all those stations.
Yeah, you were always like a standalone.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember the first meeting that we had with all the stations. It was at the Key Club, remember, in Hollywood.
I totally remember that, yes.
And they go over everybody's ratings, and when we got to Star, we were all cheering, like, I guess we had a good book or whatever. Yeah. Everybody was so excited and cheering, and I got pulled aside. Like, you're part of a bigger team now. You have to tell your people to tone it down. And I was
kidding.
Like, wow, we work so hard to do so well, and you're telling them that they can't be proud of their work. Yeah. It was just a very bizarre transition. I mean, it's the reality of it when you're working with teams of multiple stations, but it was a hard adjustment.
And we'd always been taught to be so highly competitive with each other.
That's
and
right.
All of a sudden, now don't be.
Right. Yeah.
And doing what you did, that's a whole other level of complexity when you were also having to navigate all of the changes in the industry with the mergers and acquisitions. And not only were you dealing with the program director changes up in San Francisco, but you dealt with multiple ownership changes here in LA. Right. Every group has a different philosophy, and you're trying to keep your station successful. Not only successful, but literally the top of the heap.
Right.
It's remarkable. It's like trying to hit a golf ball 300 yards on a mat that's, on the ocean, bob it up and down.
Right.
Yeah.
Threading a needle.
Yeah.
I do have to say, and I have an investment in him, but Chris Ebbett was part of that team too. He was the APD, and obviously some people don't know we're married now. We've been married for many years, but he was a very integral, very bright, and obviously continues to be successful at K-Earth. And
and we'll get into Chris. I have him.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Good.
I can't wait to dive into some of the conversations the two of you must have.
Radio nerds.
That's where you first met, then.
Yeah, we did. He was my APD actually.
Did you get along early on, or did you sometimes have some conflicts in terms of programming? Because you're both so brilliant and so talented. And at the same time, I know creatives sometimes can have very distinct ideas.
Yeah, I think that we were on the same page mostly about the station. I think that he really is a program director. So the challenge, whatever conflicts we had were more like how he would have done it versus how I was doing it and how he saw it. And I totally can understand, having been an APD myself, when you see how the guy in the chair is doing it and you would do it differently, so we would have those conversations. But he definitely raised the bar in terms of branding and marketing too. We've worked with Robert on, I remember we were trying to do a bug a day in May when the new Volkswagen Bug came out, and Robert was like, I can get 10 bugs. And Chris was the one like, no, we are doing a bug a day in May. That's the name of the promotion. Figure it out. And I was like, oh boy, but Robert was a magician. He could do anything.
Yeah,
and we really ended up giving away, it's not what it sounded like, a bug a day in May. It was a lease, of course, for 2 years. Or whatever it ended up being. But Chris really, was an integral part. And Jim Pratt, who was the imaging guy that just created all these great promos and just lifted everything up as well. It was just an amazing team. It was a fun team and a really talented team.
I need to get someone to dig into this, but I was thinking about this the other day when I was prepping. There's certainly married couples in this business and married morning shows and married program directors, Don Martin, Robin Bertolucci. But I think you and Chris, at least in my recollection, you took Star number 12554. He's taken K-Earth number 1. Both take individual stations to the very top in Los Angeles. I don't think I'm aware of it ever happening before.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's really cool.
That is cool. Wow, that's pretty cool. I do remember because he was at Arrow, and then Arrow flipped to Jack, and Jack was really Star was kind of struggling because the music was changing, the cycle was changing, and this modern AC that was so hot for a while was kind of fading.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it just, the music started to change, the cycles and so forth.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was.
And then Jack came in, and Jack was new and exciting, and so we were very competitive, and they knocked Star out pretty quickly too. It was in a couple of months, and I had so many people saying, I don't know how you guys do it, competing against each other. You're like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right. Which was that movie that had just come out. And when I would say probably the 10th person said, I don't know how you do it, I was like, why am I doing this? This is not fun for us. It's not fun at home, anymore, because we're competing against each other. It's different. So it's much better now. And there've been other times where you're not competing, where you can support each other and use each other's ideas and expertise to help each other, not to compete against each other. So.
I could see where that caused a lot of
that was not fun.
Angst.
Yeah,
I can
that
imagine.
was a terrible time.
Station's doing great. You mentioned, certainly music changed a little bit. You decide to step away in 2001. So your 6-year run, you rise all the way to VP of Operations. You've assembled a phenomenal morning show, phenomenal afternoon show. It's all really working. And you decide to just, sabbatical? What did what were your thoughts?
The first one in 2001 was actually a layoff.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because Roy put John Ivy over both Star and Kiss.
Oh, I remember John coming in, but I didn't realize.
Yeah, it was a time where there was a bunch of layoffs, and I remember people asking me, like, are you worried about your job? Are you worried? And I had a contract through the whole next year, probably 14 months left on a good, healthy contract. And I like, why would they lay me off? They'd have to pay me for all this time. I figured they would rather just have me work, even if they changed my job description or something. But I came in one day and it was like, we're eliminating your position. And I was like, I don't have to finish scheduling what bands are playing the Not So Silent Night concert, and I don't have to do this, and I don't have to worry about the morning show. And they're like, you're done. Nope, you don't have to do anything. And I was like, okay. And the next year was the best year of my life. I had a whole year paid.
I had that same deer in the headlights. Mine was in 2009, but for some reason in my mind, you had stepped away. So you sadly are downsized, and then you decided to pursue yoga.
Yeah, exactly. I had gotten the advice because I was like, maybe I should go take computer classes. Maybe I should go do this. And someone said, you should just pursue whatever seems fun to you in the moment. Just have some fun. You've got an entire year. It's January. You don't need to stress about your job yet, And so I just started doing goofy things. Like I took how to play blues harmonica, and how to be your own private investor. I just started doing all kinds of.
I love that. Is that inspired? You said your dad was a hippie. Was that inspired by him in terms of his creativity?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So, my uncle's very much like that too.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I just was trying to do things that were completely out of the box for what I had been doing for so long, and then I was doing a lot of yoga on my own, just taking classes. And a friend of mine was opening a yoga studio in the Valley, and I said I was thinking about doing the teacher training, and she said, if you do, you can work at our studio. Like we'll put you on, and so that was motivation for me to actually take it seriously, because I had not yoga teachers, it's not a full-time job, but I had an opportunity to teach what I had learned. And so, it was a great experience and just a whole other.
So cool. Were you, obviously you're with Chris, you're following radio, but were you able to kind of just step away from it?
Yeah, I definitely didn't listen to the station anymore at all for a long time. And in fact, that was when I started listening to Kevin and Bean more, because I liked the music and I loved them as a morning show, as did a lot of people. They're a hugely successful show. And just cut myself off from a lot of that, just for my own mental health too, right? Just because I had been so invested in it, to have it here one day and gone the next, there definitely was some adjustment in getting used to that idea. I
have never said this or shared this with anyone, but since you said it, I have never once intentionally listened to My FM again.
Oh, right.
I listen to radio, but I do not listen. I will, of course, sometimes walk into a restaurant or someone will have it on. I've heard it, but I've never. And it's not that I don't like them. It's just that part was over, and I think it was a therapeutic thing for me. And so it's not on my preset.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's 16 years ago. It's crazy. I sound really trite now, but
no. I can totally relate. Like you just want to need a break from it, especially because we give our whole heart and soul to it when you're there. So to have it be removed. And the irony was, and Roy said later, that he was it was not the right decision, which was nice to hear later.
But sure.
We were trying to navigate where Star was in the music landscape, and Alicia Keys' Fallen came out, and it was testing huge for us. And so when songs came from the pop world, we would usually jump on them early and then get off them and not play them in the library, right? But if there's a big hot song like Livin' La Vida Loca or the Macarena,
something that crossover, right? Yeah,
it's just Celine Dion from Titanic, and Alicia Keys' Fallen was one of those songs. But now we had moved into the building where that's not your song. You should be more alternative. That's more of a Kiss song, or that's more of a K-Big song. And that was ultimately the final straw, I think, that said, okay, we need somebody in there who's going to put Star in the right box so that it plays better with the other stations.
It's funny, we look back at that, and I understand why they thought that at the time.
Right,
but in so many ways, it was just kind of silly. Now we were so dramatic about one song. God forbid,
it's going to make or break the whole cluster, right? Yeah.
You go to R&R to run the Hot AC and AC and work with Erica. Tell me a bit about that, because I love that. I mean, you had Kevin Carter was there at that time, and I mean
Max Tolkoff.
Was Tony Novio at that time too?
Tony was gone.
He was already gone. Okay,
because Kevin was doing the Street Talk. And all that.
That's right. Okay,
and Max Tolkoff did alternative, and Cindy Maxwell did rock, and it was a great team of people there, and it was a whole different experience for me being a writer and having a weekly deadline for a column, and then as soon as you turn it in on Thursday at 3:00, now you have to think about what your next column is going to be the next week. And
when you went to UCLA, did you learn journalism at that point, or
the communications major was much more broad? It wasn't anything actually useful in terms of like news writing or editing or like they did have a radio station, but it wasn't even part of the program. You didn't take classes in radio. It was much more broad, like the impact of cartoons on children violence. And, it was much more theoretical, on sociology, linguistics, and ethics, some journalism ethics. So that was interesting, but I didn't have, but they have really good editors at R&R. And so they just need you to have the contacts in the format and have an idea. And then they would rewrite and put it in the R&R
fascinating. Okay.
Style.
Got it.
There was definitely a style guide for R&R.
That must have been, being such a student of the game, a lot of fun for you to interview, programmers and people from around the country and learning what they were doing.
Yeah, it just gave me another big picture of what the business was like, and dealing more with the record labels, of course, because of the charts and all that, and doing some artist interviews. I got to interview Neil Diamond and to interview Mick Hucknall from Simply Red. They both had big records that year. And so I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know how to do that. But it was fine.
But you figured it out.
Yeah, I figured it out. It was fun.
And what a cool, I missed that publication dearly. That was just, it was our billboard, if you will.
Right, on Thursdays or whatever, it would come to the station, and everybody would look at it. And if you got in it that week, that was exciting.
Big time.
I remember it being kind of stressful in a way, just because of the deadlines.
I don't know really the first thing about journalism. I watched a documentary on the New Yorker, which was really interesting, and just everything goes behind these articles and the intensity and having to deal with. And it was a weekly publication, R&R.
Yeah, it never stopped. Yeah, it never stopped.
That was a lot.
But it was already shrinking too. The business was shrinking. And so there was a lot of empty, it's like when you walk into a radio station now and there's so many empty cubicles and stuff. And I'm like, you should have a ping pong table or something. It's just kind of sad. There's all of these, like the ghosts of past employees. And I wouldn't have wanted to be on the business side of that. I just did my, hunkered down and and I was pregnant at the time, or got pregnant while I was there. So I was, it was a good job for me because it was still in the business. I was still high enough profile that I was, I felt like I was part of things. And I could sort of grow this baby inside and kind of have some space left energetically to be pregnant, which takes a lot out of a person.
I bet. And I remember when you came back for your second tour of duty, as we'll get into now, you were still pregnant at that point, correct?
Right, yeah.
I remember going to the new building when they had just started to build it out, and we were on a tour. We hadn't moved in yet, and we were on a tour, and I remember you being pregnant, and you and I are there showing us where the studios were going to go and the offices and so forth.
Oh, how funny.
Vividly remember that, but it was still somewhat of a construction site.
How funny. Yeah, and that was a risk too. Because I was pregnant and, I had people saying, are you sure you want to go back to being a program director? You don't even know what your life is going to be like once you have the baby, if you're going to want to have this kind of high profile job. But I was enticed back and wooed back, which felt good, right? After having been laid off.
Yeah.
It was like
Someone reach out to you?
it was Brad Samuel.
Okay.
Who was the...
Love Brad.
Yeah, Brad, B-Rad.
Yeah.
Has to be called. He's like, why are we not having Angela back? Like, she's teaching yoga and works at R&R. Like, what is she's here. Like, why don't we get her back in this building? And so he sent me a big gift basket. I remember it's a boy, because with all this baby stuff, and he was working his sales magic and just really excited at the idea of having me back. And they I guess John had been the program director, John Ivey, and they wanted to have somebody over Star specifically again. And so it was like, well, I can always leave. It's a good opportunity to go back on my own terms, right? To go back. And I remember even my agent saying, you do it for a year. If you don't like it, you do something else.
Right.
What's the harm? You've got a baby on the way, you make some good money and get back doing what you like to do. And
it's got to be so gratifying at that point certainly to be invited back.
Yeah, there was definitely
pursued. And Brad, I mean, what a personality. I've interviewed Brad probably a year or two ago, but he's gone on to be wildly successful. He's got his own agency and he does work with Jersey Mike's and probably doing better than just about anyone.
All right, good for him.
So you come back. What was the lineup now?
So then it was Jamie and Danny still, Lara Scott, and then Ryan had left, so he was after American Idol, so now he's over at KISS. Lisa is in the afternoon with Jason Pullman, who's in Dallas now at The Wolf, right? I don't know.
I think so.
I remember that he was in Atlanta for a while, and I saw him at Morning Show. It's so cool that here's another person who's still doing video of him.
Yeah, and I think he just had a baby, by the way. I saw him post about that, yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Brad Wright, who had been part of the honor team, was
Bradley.
doing...
I remember Bradley,
Yeah, Bradley was great, and Robert Lyles was still there, and the imaging guy was still there, and Chris Paddock was still there. He was the APD at the time. And
Chris is at Spotify, right?
Yeah, so it seemed like a good idea. What I didn't realize what was going to be such a struggle was that the format was just done at that time, and there was no wiggle room because my FM was in the company to just move. My goal would have been to just move Star back into the hot AC space, which is what a lot of modern ACs did.
Right.
Just go back like, oh, okay, so Goo Goo Dolls isn't as popular anymore, so let's play Maroon 5 and whoever the pop people were at that time.
Right.
But we had a wall because there was hot AC already there in the building, and so we couldn't go that direction. And so they wanted the station to go more and more alternative. But K-Rock was in that space, but K-Rock was the only alternative. So they felt like there was an opportunity there to go alternative, and they've certainly gone alternative since then, and they've been successful. So they were onto something.
You were asked to paint a picture, but you could only use these colors.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just remember some hard music tests when the songs that had been so popular were burnt, Yeah. And Michael Martin at that time was the head of programming.
Yeah, he was head of
what his title was.
programming.
Yeah, and I remember him being at a hotel room at the music test, and you could see the lines going up and
the
down.
Broadcast architectural music test.
Exactly, which we loved. And I was just, my head was down, and he just, I think, stole a bottle of wine from a party next door, and he just came in, and he just poured this like glug, 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 poured it all the way to the top.
That's
like,
so Michael Martin.
I know. He's like, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. I promise. We'll get through it. We'll figure it out. But then ultimately I realized that it was too much. Like I thought, I'm not, I was competing against Chris. I had a little baby at home that, not even sleeping through the night. And I didn't feel like I was doing a great job in the program director chair anymore because I was just spread thinner because of the home life. That's when I decided to walk away. And I felt like this was why I came back, so that I could walk away on my own terms. Like I didn't like being fired, or not fired, but let go.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't like that feeling, but I didn't mind going, I can't do this anymore. This is just too much. I can't do it. And I remember talking to Greg Ashlock, who was the
market manager.
Market manager at the time. And he's like, I know exactly how you feel. Like everybody's just spread so thin, you don't feel like you're good at anything. And it's just not a good, and I was such an achiever. I like feeling like I wasn't good at anything.
I think you're incredibly comfortable with yourself and know yourself, which is unusual in a lot of ways. And maybe it comes back from your upbringing and your parents being in touch with their arts and feelings and stuff. But
Right.
I think a lot of people may not come to that conclusion just because they aren't as comfortable with their inner being.
Yeah, maybe. I have done a lot of work on myself over the years. That's true. So it helps investing in your own mental health and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, those were anxiety-inducing times. I was across the hall, but I remember there was a lot of great times for sure, but also a lot of...
It was stressful.
It was stressful.
I do remember it being...
Yeah.
I remember it being stressful.
Now, at this point, is this when you guys moved to Canada? When did you guys go to Toronto?
That was later.
Okay.
That was not until 2010. So
2010.
Now we're at 2004 or something.
2005. Okay, got it. So you at this juncture, you start to work with Gary at Jack.
Gary Wall, yeah. So I was consulting with those stations across the country with him. And that was an interesting, because I was a music director for 7 years or 9 years or something. And I can dig into selector with the best of them. And, and that was really fun and just a different format too. So I did that, and I helped launch an alternative station in Vegas with Ken Christensen. And so it was fun to step out of Hot AC into these different formats. And
this is kind of the first time that you're a consultant per se, that you're, able to have your fingers on a few different projects and get involved.
Different markets.
And I got to share this, Gary Wall, it was his idea for this podcast. He came up with, years ago we were at dinner. He's like, you should do a podcast and
call it Chachi Loves Everybody.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's great.
He's a very, very bright programming mind.
Really creative.
Very much so. And what a great brand. That brand's still doing tremendously well. It's 50 some odd stations around the country.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strong brand, and it's so interesting because there's no personalities, but the personality is all in the writing and, and it's its own character.
Oh, and it's so, I think where Jack is, certainly the music scheduling, and a lot of thought goes into the music, but the writing around it and the topicality. I am so enamored by the writing, and they'll start every week, no joke, sometimes 20 some odd pages of just some of the funniest material, and they will whittle that down. It's in a lot of ways produced, this better than anyone because you work there, but like a late night show, and several writers involved, and a lot of thought goes into it.
Mm-hmm. Right, because there's no personalities. You have to, it all comes through that one voice.
That's right. So you're doing Jack, and then you launch Area 108. Tell me a little bit about the difference, just from a day-to-day when you're doing consulting versus programming a station, and then which one do you think was better for your health?
I think consulting is much better for anyone's health because you can use your expertise. You can try to, at least for me, I guess if you're a control freak, you would rather be the programmer because you have your hands on everything and you can get it just the way you want it. But for me, I appreciated being able to support other people, to help them, to be an ear. I remember when Steve Davis, who worked with Guy, I mentioned earlier, I would call him all the time just venting about the morning show. And he just, as a consultant, he was just there to listen to me and kind of help talk me off the ledge. And, and I was good at that as well, right? And just helping people. I just like helping people. Yeah. And so as a consultant, you can help more people and you don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Right.
I appreciate that. I don't like having the weight of the world on my
demeanor. You've got a very Zen-like quality. You're very easy to talk to.
Oh, that's good.
So Randy Lane, you had obviously known Randy from the early days at Star, right. And Randy's gone on to have his own consultancy and become very successful.
And we kept hiring him because I needed help with Jamie and Danny, and needed help with Ryan and Lisa, and he would come in.
Okay.
And he has his own wisdom, and also he would come in and say the same thing that I've been trying to say, but as a third party credibility, they would be like, "Oh, good idea, Randy. You're so smart." I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been saying that for weeks. What are you talking about?" But I always liked what he did, in working with the talent. And I think that even though talent can be a handful and can be challenging, it's really so creative and they're so interesting, such interesting people and funny.
Oh, for sure.
And I like being around those people. So I was always intrigued by his business, and I'd always kind of kept in touch with him. Like, if you ever need an extra person to help you with the talent coaching, let me know, because I was consulting, moving into that space. And so he finally had room for me. And I think it was 2007. I started working with him, and that was
awesome. And so tell me a bit about that. That really focused more on now morning show consulting.
Right.
And so when a talent would approach you guys, or someone would say to you, Chet Buchanan, whoever it might be, how would you decide who would coach them and how that would work amongst the two of you?
Well, I think that was really at that time a Randy, he would give me the smaller shows at the time, the ones that were in the smaller markets, just because I was just getting my feet wet too and learning, or I would be on calls with him and listen to him.
Got it.
But that was a transition of really, I remember listening to one show, I won't name, and I'm like, because as a listener, you can go like, oh my gosh, what a terrible show. They're not this, they're not funny, they're not creative or whatever. And he's like, well, we can help them then. as opposed to just saying that they're a bad show. It's like as a coach, you have to go in and go, how can we make them go from a 3 to a 5 or a 5 to a 6 or a 6 to a 7? How can we?
I like that mentality. You're helping build something.
Yeah, you
now.
have to meet them where they are. You can't judge every show by the best show that's out there, because these guys they may not have the experience, they may not have the coaching or the program director in the building to help them, and they may not have the talent, really.
And at that point, you're probably looking more at like, what's their attitude? Can we build them to where they need to be?
Right.
Are they going to put in the work?
Right, exactly. And people, he'd say, how was the meeting? And I'd say, well, we'll see. I mean, I used to say this as a program director too. Ken would say, how was your meeting with the morning show? I'm like, well, we'll see how the show sounds tomorrow. I'll get back to you how the meeting was. Did they hear anything? Are they changing anything? Can they take what you give them and make adjustments in the show? And some can, and some get really stuck in their ways. And so it's interesting.
Are you traveling a lot at this time, or are you able to do most of that from here?
Back then?
Yeah.
There was more traveling for sure, because there wasn't Zoom. We would do conference calls, which are terrible for meetings like that. It's hard when you're coaching, when you can't see someone's body language, because the body language is really important. You can see when someone's shutting down, and when they're leaning in, when they're bored, and if you're on a conference call, you can't really see it. So we did do a lot more traveling. Since the pandemic, there's not as much.
Right.
I mean, budgets, I think, are different now, but also the technology is so different that it's just
makes it at least easier.
Yeah. Although I do, when I go into a radio station, I still, even coming in here and being in a studio like this with microphones and headphones and stuff, it's exciting. It's fun. I
love the vibe of a radio station. We built this. We wanted it to look, as much like a radio station as we could.
It does. It's great.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you're working with Randy and you're coaching and you're raising, obviously, kids and very busy, you decide to become a life coach as well. Right. Tell me a little bit about that track.
Yeah, that was really, I think the way that it came up was that I had a friend who decided to do it, and I was her. And when you train that, you need guinea pigs who are willing to put their life in your hands for free so that you can practice coaching. And
right.
And I had been in and out of therapy like everybody, and I'd never had a life coach before. And she was new at it, but it was such an interesting process, and I loved it. And I thought, this is really cool. I want to try it. I didn't end up doing the same program that she did, but I was thinking, radio is radio. What's happening with radio as there's so many changes in the companies and all that. Maybe I could pivot and just go become a life coach. And so I went through this whole program, but I realized as I was practicing and I was coaching, some of the talent that I had been coaching for talent coaching, I then became my life coaching guinea pigs, because they were the people that I knew and I was working with, and they were up for it. And I realized that it actually helped build my confidence in being a talent coach and my abilities in being a talent coach. And so I didn't have to leave talent coaching to go be a life coach. I could just incorporate all of these new techniques that I had learned and listening skills and all that, and just be a better talent coach. And which
I love, by the way.
It's so cool. It's really fun.
Allows you, I think, to get so much deeper with your talent than just the on-air coaching, if you will.
Right. How to tease. And
right. Now, as a talent coach, do you implement a lot of what you learned as a life coach?
I do all the time. Sometimes I don't even know I'm doing, I don't do it consciously anymore, but just listening, you hear different cues that you can pick up on.
My mother became a life coach. And
she did?
Yeah, she did that for a few years, and she absolutely loved it. And I think that there's so much to be said in terms of certainly therapy, but in terms of like really just being in touch with your feelings and being in touch with what your goals. And you mentioned Ryan Seacrest, where he was just so driven from day one and, mapping things out. And
yeah.
In the world that we live in now, where there's so many different things coming at us and it's so anxiety inducing, and to have someone there, there's a lot of, business coaches, and it's become, I think you were ahead of your time. It's become so much more prevalent now than it was, 15, 20 years ago.
So true. Performance coaches and executive coaches and stuff.
Yeah.
Did your mom drive you crazy when she was going through the life coaching? Chris certainly was like, do you see what I have to live with? Because I was like, couldn't turn it off, What are you making that mean? That's my question. It can be annoying, but it's
so you guys go to Canada now.
Yeah.
Chris gets a job to go, and I apologize, it's a big station up in,
it was Virgin Radio and Boom in Toronto.
What was that life change like,
That was cold. That's all I can say. No, it was cool because we were working with Randy and I were already working with Bell Media. I think it was Astral at the time, or was merging to become Bell Media. So I was working with a lot of shows across Canada anyway. So for me, it was good to be in Canada because I had a little bit more credibility with them because I had just learned so much more about what it was like to be Canadian and living there as opposed to consulting from California.
Right.
You know? And Chris had a great run there. And it was a great time. Our kids were 6 and 3 when we got there and 10 and 7 when we moved back. So it was fun for them. And
they got into hockey, one of them, right?
Because one of them is still playing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But it's a big life change. I know it's kind of like it's America adjacent, but it's a different country. And
I mean, for me, I think the biggest change was the weather, right? So Chris grew up in Indiana and he'd lived in Philly, so he was used to weather and seasons. I had been in San Francisco and LA my whole life, and so I was not used to 6 months of winter. Like, this is bullshit. I do not like this. And also because I was working from home, I was more isolated. Like, he had his 2 radio stations, so he had his team there that he had all day with, and so when he came home, he was he was unwinding from a busy day, and I was working from home by myself in this house, and then the kids come home, and so it was harder for me to find my people. I mean, I eventually did, but it took a long time. So it was more, I don't mean to be a pity party, but I was more isolated and cold and lonely. Yeah. And so for me, it wasn't quite as fun, but we do look back on those times really fondly.
What a unique experience.
Yeah. The tobogganing and the maple syrup and the leaves and the hockey games and all the stuff. It was really a fun time. And our kids have really fond memories of being there too. But I wanted to move back before, they got too used to it there.
I get it. We have a team member in Canada, and I was on a staff call the other day. I was asking everyone how they got through the storm and so forth. And he goes, I asked him specifically, how was it in Toronto? And he says, I don't know, all winter there's always a foot of snow outside my door.
Oh my God. I know, right?
It's just always that way. Yeah. I mean, it is a beautiful city though, and certainly in the summer months.
Yeah.
But what a cool experience. Was programming for Chris, and I'm sure you were involved just, by the nature of who you are, is there a lot of difference in programming in Toronto for the Canadian audience versus how it's done here?
Well, I think that the Canadian content element of it, where you have to play 30% or 40%, depending on the station of Canadian artists, definitely changes how you...
The Can, right? Is it Can. Okay.
Yeah, Canadian content. There was some adjustment there, and then the rating system is different. You don't have access to all of the great PD Advantage kind of programs that Nielsen offers. It's a whole different world there, and so that was a challenge. But I think generally it's the same. You've got your morning shows, you've got your imaging and your promotions. Are you bringing the station to life? Are you making people care about something that they may not otherwise care about? Can you make a product that people really care about? And so he was able to do that.
In 2013, you strike out on your own and you start Angela Perelli Consulting.
Yeah.
And, the list of some of your clients is really just Shaboy that we mentioned earlier, Dave Ryan, who I interviewed last month, who's incredible. You've worked with Carson Daly, Mercedes in the Morning, Shaboy. So tell me a bit about your coaching business today.
Well, yeah, when I went out on my own in 2013, I continued to work with this company in Canada, and I continue to this day. That's definitely the biggest body of work that I have is Bell Media, which their big claim to fame now is Heated Rivalry, right? Which came through Crave, which is on their TV side. So they're flying high with that. But so I continue to work with a lot of the stations across the country in various markets there. And I have worked either on retainer by the talent themselves or companies hire me. It's a little bit challenging, to be honest, because Dennis Clark is the iHeart person and Odyssey is their own person. So I pick up different shows along the way. And you and I were talking not that long ago about how the Christian radio market has really opened up, and they're really hungry for deepening the connection and building connection with their talent and their audience.
It's been a lot of fun to learn about that format. And I got to interview our friend Tim Dukes a few months ago, and he just joined us on the board of the LABF, which we're really happy to have. But yeah, I want to say there's 40 million listeners every month or every week to CCM Radio, Contemporary Christian Music.
Yeah,
radio,
it's one of the few that are really growing, right? And so it's a great opportunity.
It really is. I went to the Momentum conference a couple of years ago that you spoke at.
Yeah.
And there's several thousand people people at this convention. It's really impressive.
It's such a cool convention because they bring everybody. They have the promotions directors, the GMs, sometimes the morning shows, the music directors. It's like the old days.
It really is. It kind of reminds me of some of the old original R&R conventions. They've got bands in between the speakers and, really beautiful dinners and lunches. And
right. It's a whole thing.
It's
another world.
It is. They do a phenomenal job. And I honestly think that they, as a format, do such a phenomenal job of showing the success of radio. That radio still is tremendously impactful. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that on the commercial side of the business.
Yeah, really, that when they run their fundraising and you hear the stories of people that, were about to kill themselves and then they turned on the radio. And to be honest, even going back to my story about Dawn Blue, it was almost similar, right? There are people that are just struggling in their life and you turn on the radio and it makes them feel good. It makes their life better. And I just love that radio has that impact.
You and me both. I got to go visit Dave Ramsey a couple of years ago. Have you been to his facility outside of Nashville?
No.
It is incredible. People will travel all over the country to go and visit him. And he does his show in a beautiful studio, but there's an area for an audience to sit and watch. And you can go and sit and watch him do his show. And then he'll bring people up during the show and celebrate that they're now debt free. So it's become almost like a pilgrimage when you get out of debt to go visit Dave, and then he'll take your picture, you get your picture with him, and he gives you a certificate and so forth. There's a bookstore, a coffee shop. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful facilities. I honestly think, short of maybe the BBC, it's the nicest facility I've ever been. The broadcast facility. It's remarkable.
Wow. Gotta check that out.
I love those types of stories, though. It's really, I think it's impactful for certainly for the listeners, and it really does show what we can do as broadcasters is truly meaningful.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about, so you're obviously consulting. Chris, and let's dig back into that, is doing remarkably well. He's the head of programming for Odyssey here in LA. I think he's actually more than LA. He's got San Diego, Phoenix, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
he's got a lot on his plate.
There's a lot going on, but he's definitely directly over K-Earth, The Wave, and KNX. And he's just doing a great job. I'm so proud of him. And he's so smart and just knows how to repeat success. And that's when you know somebody's really smart, is that they can take one station in one format and make it better, and then go to a completely different format and make that one better. It's just a sign of how good he is.
We get, as you know, we're in the imaging business, and we work with a lot of classic hit stations. And if I had a nickel for every time we had a classic hit station say, do we want to sound like K-Earth?
Oh, really?
I'd be a rich man. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that is, it sounds phenomenal. Obviously, I love Greg Sims and Joe Cipriano and Gary. I mean, the station just really, truly sounds amazing. Do you still get into conversations about programming? Will he sometimes come home at night and just, want your input?
We do sometimes. We joke about how we should have a podcast.
You should. I'd listen.
Sometimes we just start talking about, or we're driving in the car and listening to some, maybe we're in another market and just turn on the radio, and then we just start criticizing from all angles, and it's like, save it for the podcast. But we do. His strength is really brand building and imaging and marketing. And then I came from the music and the morning show talent side. So it's a really good balance.
Yeah.
We can talk about, I can ask him certain things that I hear on a station, like, is this a big deal? And he's like, no, that doesn't make a difference. Or and vice versa. So we talk, it's easy now because we're not competitive. We support each other, and it's fun. We've both been in radio forever. And so you can't turn it off.
I still love it. Every day. I love those conversations and the brainstorming and the creativity. So I totally understand that.
Sometimes I will tell him when I hear two songs back to back that I don't think belong back to back on K-Earth or whatever. And he's like, let me look that up.
That was a train wreck.
Yeah, right? I'm like, do you want me to tell you when I hear something or not? And he's like, no, tell me. It's fine. He's much less, I would be much more defensive about it than he is. And when, because he would say something to me and I get all mad. But he doesn't get mad.
That's so funny. There's still moments where I'll hear a station, there's a little bit of dead air, and I go to call the hotline.
Yeah, right? What's going on in there? Get your shit together. That's funny.
I got a bonus question for you.
Oh.
I got two, actually, because one, it's heady. I mean, they're both a little bit heady. But number one, people today, I think, are wondering about their future in our business. What would be your advice to the young you, essentially, or someone that's coming up in this business?
I'm joking that there's dead air. I mean, it is such a trying time, but I think that radio is here to stay. It's just we don't know how it's going to evolve. And so just continuing to network and stay in contact with people, show up consistently, work hard, high integrity, all of the stuff that we did growing up in this business, and also being open to as many skills as you can learn, social media and all of that, because you just don't know where it's going to go. Yeah. And I wish there were more young people that were like, I love radio, but it's hard to find those young people that are as passionate. They didn't grow up with it the way we did, right? Listening to it in bed or listening to it on the school bus, So I don't know that that's a good answer, but.
Well, no, I think it is a good answer, especially on, I think Greg's a perfect example of what it's like today to be a successful talent. Our friend Greg Sims, here he's, remarkably successful at K-Earth, I'm sure one of the top rated afternoon shows, but he's got his food Instagram account that Grub with Greg. Right. And it's become gigantic, and he's done a phenomenal job, I think, of blending his on-air personality with this passion in his life. He, much like you, he took a bit of a detour and became a chef, and he's married those two, and I think it's really clever. And
and what a great example of having your own income that's separate from the radio station. Yeah. You're not as reliant on the corporate radio business, and you have your own thing going, because that just gives you a little bit more peace of mind.
Totally. And he hustles. I mean, he definitely is working, and he's visiting a different restaurant. But it feels like every day, but I certainly multiple times a week. And I think they complement each other really well.
Yeah, they really do. And people can find different. There's different people that have different platforms like that, depending on what they're into. Right? He happens to be into food, and it's a great account to follow. I love it, watching him eat tacos.
Right. I don't know how he...
I think he has a spit bucket.
He's got to. Yeah. And honestly, I guess Ryan probably was the architect of having so many different side hustles, and still to this day that have all become, this massive enterprise. But that is another way to... And he still does a morning show every day.
I don't know how he does that, to be honest.
I don't either. But it's a heck of a formula for sure.
Yeah.
Tell me what you want to be remembered for.
Oh, that is a heady question.
It is.
I think that I talked to a couple of people in prepping for this interview, because I knew we were going to get into the life coaching and the talent coaching and all of that. And I'm like, how did I help you? And it really has been the deeper conversations. I talked to one host who said, when I lost my job, you told me that I really needed to figure out who I was off the air before I could go back on the air and do it, because he had completely lost his identity and didn't know who he was. And there was somebody else who said, you're one of the wisest people I know. You always gave great advice, and you're so grounded. And I think, and I could be doing this not in radio, but the fact that I've found my way to this subculture and this ecosystem of people, and to have a positive impact on them, not just on the show, which then ripples to the communities and doing good, entertaining and compelling radio for the audience, but also to be improving their mental health and their lives. I've done a couple of mental health panels now for Morning Show Boot Camp with hosts, and we're doing one this summer, I think, on imposter syndrome and stuff. So I just really am proud of the depth of impact that I've had, and I get that feedback, so I'm really proud of that.
I absolutely love that. I feel, and by the way, I'd love to sponsor that panel, because I think it's so incredibly important. We've lost, Gene, very sadly, Ace, very sadly, Gary Krantz.
I got goosebumps.
Me too. And I feel that this industry, which is so small and so family-like, can be we're very tough on each other. We're very harsh in terms of, sometimes cutthroat, and don't treat people as well as I wish that we did.
Right.
And I love that you are in touch with that, and you're trying to help people and connect with them at that level, because we are so concerned about being funny or being entertaining or telling a great story, and sometimes not there for each other the same way I wish that we would be.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm really proud of that. That's what I would want to be remembered for.
Angela, this has been phenomenal.
Oh, thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you for being here. And where do people find you? Obviously, I know you've got a website.
I do. It's easy. AngelaPerelli.com. That's easy. My email is Angela@AngelaPerelli.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you'll leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Engineered by Darren Silva. Produced and edited by Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.